So we've been talking today a bit about the cross-national online survey, the Kronos panel that has helped collect the data for Infra4NextGen. So I want to give you a bit more information about Kronos. Kronos is a cross-sectional web panel with respondents recruited from the European Social Survey. It collects survey data at individual level from European countries. It is a cross-sectional panel, but it has a couple of longitudinal questions as well, and more will come. It collects data online, so there are web interviews that are being conducted, but we also included offline population in Kronos 1. They were given a tablet that could connect to the internet, and in Kronos 3, which is the project that we're currently is currently ongoing. So this Kronos panel started about 10 years ago, and to date there have been 3 different Kronoses, Kronos very creatively, Kronos 1, 2, and 3, and Kronos 3 is still ongoing. And the data can be downloaded, and I'll show you where to find it exactly from the ESS website data portal. So what's the difference between the ESS and Kronos? Well, the ESS is a repeated cross-national survey. The sample changes in each wave, but some questions are repeated. So there is a core module of questions that are being repeated every 2 years when we collect data on the ESS. But then there are also the rotating modules, which differ with every round. Sometimes these rotating modules also repeat, and in those cases, there are some questions that are being asked again. But again, it is a cross-sectional sample. So the ESS is used to look at temporal changes that can only be tracked at the aggregate level. Kronos, on the other side, is a cross-sectional panel with respondents recruited from the ESS that are interviewed again in subsequent waves. So their participants are recruited from the ESS main survey, and then they're being recruited to the panel and interviewed again. Different questions are introduced in each wave, but there are some, as I said, longitudinal questions, and it can be linked back to the respondents' ESS data. So the last iteration of Kronos is Kronos 3, and Kronos 3 was repurposed to serve 2 large Horizon Europe projects, Infra4NextGen and So Green. Kronos 3 collects data in 11 countries. It is an input harmonized and centrally administered panel, so everything is starts from the main Kronos team at the European Social Survey, and it gets disseminated to the national teams. It's, as I said, recruits from the ESS round 10 and 11. I'll explain in a second how we've done that. It uses a mixed mode approach, and it is a web and paper self-completion questionnaire. So we include the offline population by sending them paper questionnaires. Panelists on the Kronos panel are aged 18 and above. And in total, there will have been 8 waves by the end of this Kronos. This is just an overview of the other 2, the Kronos 1 and 2 and 3. And this is a slide just explaining how the recruitment is done off the back of the ESS. So this is called the piggyback approach. And basically what it means is that from ESS round 10, we've recruited participants who took part in Kronos 2. And then in ESS 11, we recruited another batch of participants. But the ones from Kronos 2 that were still active and still interested in participating on the panel were brought on the Kronos 3 panel as well. So the Kronos 3 basically incorporates participants recruited from ESS round 10 and ESS round 11. And they're these participants that have also taken part in Kronos 2. So about the fieldwork period for Kronos 3, we started off in September 2024. As I said in the beginning of today, the Infra4NextGen project started in March 2024. And it was a very abrupt start. We started developing questions, looking for questions, doing the inventory of items that are already existent, together with our academic and policy experts. And then we immediately started collecting data as soon as we could in September 2024 with Wave 1. The 5 waves of Kronos were conducted until May, June 2025. Um, and the panel is still being used now for another project, for the So Green project, with data just being, we've just released data from wave 6, and we're about to go in the field with wave 7. So these are the data releases for the Infra4NextGen waves. Basically, once the data is collected, so it goes into the field, the project goes in the field, and then the data is the field period is about a month, and then there's all this data cleaning and data processing that happens, and it gets released about 4 to 6 months later. So the last publication of Infra4NextGen waves was in October 2025. And at that point, we had released 5 waves of data. So we also released a file, an integrated file of the 5 different waves. This is just a slide to show you the panel loyalty. So we're quite happy with our with our Kronos panelists in general. So the active panelists are those that started at least one wave. And this slide shows the percentage of panelists who completed all 5 waves over the percentage of active panelists. So the ones that have started at least one wave. So as you can see, in the 11 countries where we collect Kronos data, the panel loyalty is quite high for a self-completion panel. And in order to ensure representativeness, as I said, we include both online and offline populations, so web and paper. The offline population is identified by a variable in the ESS main stage. And, sorry. Yes, this is the variable. So it basically asks people how often do they use the internet on any device, like a computer, tablet, or smartphone, whether for work or personal use. And so the people who say that they use the device, that they use the internet at least a few times a week, most days or every day, they're automatically put in the web panel. Those who say never, they are sent paper questionnaires, and those who say that they only occasionally use the internet are basically given a choice. And this is just showing the response rates for the 5 waves. There was a bit of a rough start with wave 1. We had some issues in some countries, as can be seen, but then things kind of leveled off. And overall, I think we can say that we had a good response rate. It was a 60% response rate for the 11 countries over the 5 different waves. So it's done pretty well. So the Kronos panel, Kronos 3, included 5 waves of 90 questions. There were 18 items per wave for each one of the NextGenU area of investigation. The questions were developed by the Kronos team, the academic and JRC experts, to ensure that they are relevant both in terms of academic output, but also for policy use. We developed some new items if we couldn't find ones that were reliable and already existing, but also some items were modified or were just used exactly the same as on other existing surveys. And these are the countries where Kronos was fielded: Austria, Belgium, Czechia, Finland, France, Hungary, Iceland, Poland, Portugal, Slovenia, and the UK. So each one of the pillars included different tasks. One of them was the inventory of cross-national survey items. Then we conducted data summaries, which basically summarized the data already existing in the field. Then we constructed and fielded survey items for Kronos 3, and we analyzed this panel data, and this resulted in the top-line reports, which are now all published. And we also helped with preparation for materials for some qualitative work done with the deliberative workshops. So all of this work was, a joint effort between the academic experts, the JRC experts, and the Kronos team and the research fellows from EVS, GGS, and ESS. In terms of questionnaire content, so as I said, each wave had about 18 items per theme. So we tried to keep it very balanced. As we've seen, there were themes that were kind of cross-cutting across the 5 waves, things related to intergenerational fairness or issues related to AI that could impact like the different the different themes. But in terms of the equal pillar, these are the broad main themes that were covered, as you can see in each wave. And you can explore these on the website as well, just to see exactly which questions were asked. But these are just the broad themes, the topics. So in order to download Kronos data, and I will soon share my screen and show you exactly how to do this, but you can go to the European Social Survey website and then find the data portal, and that's where you can download the Kronos data. You can download Cronoses from like the previous Cronoses, Kronos 1, 2, and the current one, Kronos 3, sorry. And once you download the data, you can download it in different formats. You can download it as CSV, SPSS, or Stata format, or you can also try to use to explore the Kronos data online. There's an analysis tool and a variable tool that can be used to have a look at the different data. So maybe sometimes before downloading all of the whole data file, some people like to just have a go at this and just play a little bit with the different variables just to see what's there. So as I said, you can also connect the responses of our participants from Kronos back to their ESS data from ESS round 10 and round 11. And that gives us like a larger kind of sample of data points, and you can connect their responses to the Kronos questions with more demographic information or the core questions that were asked in the ESS. So if you're interested in this, this is kind of like just an overview of how you can do that. If you're, for example, collecting data, if you're downloading data from 2 different rounds of the ESS, this will be just added on. But if you're interested in looking at the Kronos respondents, they can be linked back to their ESS responses. These are some useful documents that you can find online on Kronos 1, 2, and 3 user guides. And also there is a guide for how to use the weights on the ESS. We are currently in the process of developing a weight for the 5 waves combined. So currently, when you download each one of the different waves, you can use weights for each specific wave. But soon, hopefully within the next month, we will have weights for the 5 waves of Kronos 3 combined. And I'm going to stop sharing this right now and try to see if I can give you a bit of a demonstration. Can you see my... Yeah, okay. So this is the European Social Survey website. And if you're interested in the data, you can find it here under data, quite intuitively. This takes you to the ESS data portal, and the ESS data portal is basically hosted by SICT, which is our archive, the organization in Norway that archives and kind of processes all of the data that the ESS and Kronos have produced. This is an overview of the first page of the portal, and as you can see, you can explore the ESS data or explore the Kronos data. If there's something in particular that you're interested, a variable in particular that you might be interested, you can look for it here. So for example, let's see, inequality. If you just search for inequality, you get a lot of responses of the different types of questions that have been asked on the ESS and related studies, ESS, Kronos, and related studies. If you're interested in kind of narrowing the scope of your search, you can choose either just the ESS or just Chronos. And here you'll see that you have the different Chronos waves of data. You can also adjust the publication year of the data, and that will give you kind of like just the answers from that particular time. So by going back to the data portal and going to the Chronos data, this is the landing page for the Chronos, the cross-national online survey, and here you have links to the 3 different Chronoses. We're interested in Chronos 3. And by clicking on that, you basically get the 6 different waves that have currently been published for Chronos. The ones that are of interest to us are waves 1 to 5. You can browse them by country. So if, let's say, you're interested in specifically about data from Finland, for example, you can see that they participated in all 6 waves. And clicking on that, you get more information about the data collection period, the response rates, the case counts, and so on. Again, more information about the mode of collection of data. And then you can also browse by theme. So clicking on the theme, it kind of highlights the different waves in the 5 different pillars that we've been collected. We're interested in Make It Equal now. And just by clicking on Make It Equal, you get a list of all of the variables. And I think one thing that we can start today when we start the practical exercises by doing is just scrolling through these to see what questions were asked, what's out there. Clicking on each one of them, you get the response categories as well, and the number, like the variable name. And let's say if you're interested in equal opportunities for lesbian, gay, and bisexual people have gone too far. So this would be, let's say, this is the question that we're interested in.
Ruxandra, could you enlarge the screen a bit? It's a bit small.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Is that better? Now I lost my question. Here it is. So if we click on it, then we go to the variable viewer. So here is the question, the equal opportunities. The question is, do you think the policies designed to give equal opportunities to lesbian, gays, bisexual people in your country have gone too far or not far enough? And immediately when you click on that, you get a bar chart of the responses. So you see how each country, kind of like the distributions in each country are spread out. And if you hover over it, you can get the percentages as well as the N cases. This is data that is weighted with the post-ratification weights for wave 3. And then here you can look at the map as well. If you're interested in doing, sorry, try to make it a little bit smaller. You can click on the theme, so make it equal. And here again, just going down, you can select the different variables. So the different variables in each one of the waves. You can also do a bit of analysis here. So let's say we're looking at make it equal, and we can select this variable and analyze it on the side. Like this. So if you select 2 different variables, I have friends or acquaintances who are lesbian, gay, or bisexual, versus living in an area which is a good place to live for lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. You get the split by different countries as well. and you can compare them. So this is just a way of playing a little bit with the data before committing to downloading the files. Of course, if you want to download the files, they're here. You can just click on download and download all of them. I think this is basically it. So just to recap a little bit. So you have to go to the data portal. There you get the European Social Survey, Kronos, and other related studies. And we're interested in Kronos 3. You can browse by wave, by country, or by theme, and download data files by theme to cover all waves, or all waves and all themes in different formats. You can use the variable viewer and get some a brief kind of overview, descriptive analysis on the data, or you can use the online analysis tool when you look at two different variables, and then you get a split by the two different variables by country.